The red dust of Mars swirled outside the colony's dome as Marcus ran through the corridors, his small feet making soft thuds against the metal floor. His parents always told him not to run in the diplomatic wing, but today was special. The aliens had brought new toys from their worlds, and the 8-year-old couldn't contain his excitement. Marcus slowed down when he saw the tall, blue-skinned delegates ahead. They turned their long necks to look at him, their silver eyes gleaming with what he had learned was amusement. After 3 months of the cultural exchange program, he had gotten good at reading their expressions. "Good morning, young one," said lead delegate Ray. Marcus had given him that nickname because his real name was too hard to pronounce. Ray didn't mind. He said it helped him understand human customs better. "Ray, did you bring the floating balls today?" Marcus bounced on his toes, his dark curls bobbing with each movement. The delegate reached into a shimmering pouch and pulled out 3 spheres that glowed with soft rainbow colors. In the observation room above, Thomas and Mary Thompson watched their son interact with the aliens. As colonial administrators, they had been chosen to host the first major cultural exchange between humans and the Galactic Council. Marcus had proved to be their secret weapon. His innocent curiosity and genuine friendliness had helped break down barriers faster than any diplomatic protocol. "The boy is a natural bridge builder," said Director Peters, standing beside them. "Who would have thought our best diplomat would be an 8-year-old? The peace of the moment shattered as alarms suddenly blared through the complex. Red lights flashed, and automated doors began to seal. A squad of Council security forces burst into the chamber, their armor gleaming and weapons raised. "Threat detected. Unregistered energy signature." Their harsh electronic voices echoed off the walls. Marcus stood frozen, the floating toys still spinning around him. Ray moved to explain, but the security forces pushed him aside. Their scanners focused on the child. "Wait," Ray shouted. "Those are just toys. Council-approved toys." Mary screamed as she saw the weapons lock onto her son. Thomas slammed his fist against the observation window, but it was designed to withstand Martian dust storms. Director Peters was already shouting into his communicator for security override. The Council forces didn't hesitate. They didn't check their readings again. They didn't listen to their own delegates' protests. A beam of light struck Marcus, and in an instant he was gone. Not even ashes remained. The silence that followed lasted only a heartbeat before chaos erupted. Human security forces flooded the room, but it was too late. The Council forces stood their ground, citing protocols about unregistered energy signatures. Ray fell to his knees, his blue skin turned almost white with horror. The entire incident was captured by dozens of cameras. Every angle, every moment, every word was recorded and immediately transmitted back to Earth. Millions watched as the Council forces gunned down a child playing with approved toys, given to him by their own delegate. Within an hour, the footage had been seen by billions. The Council's attempts to explain came too late. Their claims about security protocols fell on deaf ears. All humanity saw was Marcus, smiling one moment and gone the next. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, something ancient stirred. In the frozen wastes of Antarctica, long dormant sensors began to pulse. And in the hearts of every human who watched the footage, something changed. The Council had made a mistake. They had acted without thought, without mercy, and without understanding the consequences. They had killed a child. They had killed a human child. And humanity's response would shake the foundations of the galaxy. In their high offices on distant worlds, the Council leaders didn't understand why this single death caused such outrage. They didn't understand why their usual diplomatic measures weren't working. They didn't understand that they had just broken the final seal on a power they had thought long buried. As Marcus's parents were escorted from the observation room, their grief radiating like a physical force, the first tremors of what was to come began. Deep in Earth's core, ancient machines hummed to life. In orbit around distant stars, hidden sensors activated. And in the collective consciousness of humanity, A memory began to surface, a memory of a time when the stars themselves trembled at humanity's might. The world changed in the 24 hours after Marcus's death. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed on something. This would not stand. The United Nations chamber was packed. Leaders who normally sent representatives had come in person. Old enemies sat side by side, their usual disputes forgotten in the face of something far more important. They all watched the screens as the final moments of Marcus's life played again. "They've been watching us," announced General Adams, his weathered face grim as he stepped up to the podium. "Not just since first contact. For centuries." He gestured, and new images filled the screens. Strange satellites, carefully hidden behind cloaking technology that humanity shouldn't have been able to detect. But they had detected them, and what they found chilled everyone to the bone. The Council had watched Earth's every move. They had watched the world wars. They had watched the Cold War. They had watched and done nothing as millions died. And now they claimed authority over humanity's children. But that wasn't the biggest revelation of the day. Dr. Rogers, head of the Ancient Earth Studies Division, took the podium next. Her hand shook as she held up a small crystalline device. "We found this 3 months ago in the Mariana Trench. We thought it was alien technology. We were wrong." She placed it on a scanner, and holographic images filled the chamber. They showed Earth, but not the Earth anyone knew. Earth with vast cities that stretched into the skies. Earth with ships that dwarfed modern space stations. Earth as it had been 50,000 years ago. "We weren't always limited to one planet," Dr. Rogers continued. "We ruled the stars. We had technology that made our current achievements look like stone tools. And then something happened. Something that made our ancestors hide it all away and choose to forget." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. But they fell silent as alarms began to sound. Not emergency alarms. These were different, deeper, older. They came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Military bases worldwide reported strange energy readings. The old bunkers, the ones that hadn't been opened since the Cold War, were opening themselves. In the Mariana Trench, something vast was beginning to move. Under the ice of Antarctica, heat blooms appeared on satellite imagery, melting patterns too regular to be natural. The Council's representatives demanded entry to the UN chamber. For the first time in history, they were denied. Humanity had questions that needed answering, and they would find those answers themselves. In orbit, the Council's ships prepared to demonstrate their power. They thought their technology was superior. They thought Earth was defenseless. They were wrong. "There's something else," General Adams said, his voice cutting through the chaos. The device Dr. Rogers found, it wasn't just a record. It was a key. And Marcus's death. He paused, emotion finally breaking through his professional facade. Marcus's death was the final condition for its activation. The ground trembled, not just in New York, but everywhere. In every ocean, ancient machines were waking up. In every mountain range, hidden doors were opening. And in every human heart, a strange feeling began to grow. A mixture of grief, rage, and something else. Something older. A memory of power. The Council's ships moved closer to Earth, preparing to force compliance. On their command bridges, alarms began to sound. Their sensors detected energy signatures unlike anything in their database. Power readings that shouldn't have been possible from a primitive world. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, the first of the ancient fleet began to rise. The Council had made many mistakes. They had underestimated humanity's unity in the face of tragedy. They had underestimated the love parents everywhere would feel for a murdered child. But their biggest mistake was not understanding what they had done. They hadn't just killed an innocent boy. They had awakened something that their ancestors had feared. Something that had chosen sleep rather than destruction. Something that was now very, very angry. And as the waters of the Pacific began to churn, as ancient warships larger than cities began to break the surface, As long-dormant defense systems around the planet hummed to life, one thing became very clear. Humanity was about to remind the galaxy why their ancestors had feared them so much. The first ship broke the ocean's surface like a rising mountain. Water cascaded down its sides in silver sheets, revealing metal that gleamed with colors that shouldn't exist. It was bigger than any aircraft carrier ever built, its hull stretching 5 kilometers from bow to stern. But it was only the beginning. More ships followed, each different from the last. Sleek destroyers that cut through the waves like knives. Massive carriers that could hold entire cities. Strange crafts that ignored gravity itself, rising from the depths at impossible angles. The Pacific Ocean churned as humanity's ancient fleet awakened. In orbit, the Council ships backed away. Their sensors couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. The energy readings from a single one of these vessels exceeded the output of their entire fleet. And there were hundreds of them still rising. Inside the UN chamber, Dr. Rogers worked frantically at her console as new data poured in. "The ships are activating their AI systems," she announced, her voice filled with wonder. They're talking to each other, and they're talking to us." Screens around the world lit up with the same message, written in every human language. Identity confirmed. Human genetic markers verified. Unlocking full systems access. Welcome back, children of Earth. The ships weren't just warships. They were libraries, factories, and universities all in one. Each vessel contained the knowledge of a civilization that had once spanned thousands of worlds, and they recognized modern humans as their descendants. The largest ship, the one that had risen first, sent a special signal. Deep in Earth's orbit, hidden behind carefully crafted illusions, ancient defense platforms began to power up. The Council ships found themselves surrounded by weapons they couldn't even understand. "Your species has awakened ahead of schedule," the fleet's central AI announced through every communication device on Earth. "The death of the child, Marcus Thompson, has triggered emergency protocols. We have reviewed the incident. We have judged it unjust. We stand ready to serve." In Antarctica, more wonders emerge. Not ships this time, but massive production facilities. They had slept beneath the ice for 50,000 years, waiting for the day they would be needed. Now they hummed with power, ready to create technology that would make Earth's most advanced innovations look like toys. The Council ships tried to contact their homeworld, but found their communications blocked. Humanity's ancient defense systems had already isolated Earth's space. No messages would get out until humanity was ready. General Adams watched in awe as one of the smaller ships landed near the UN building. It settled onto the water of the East River as gently as a falling leaf, despite being larger than any modern warship. A door opened in its side, and a holographic figure stepped out, an interface for the fleet's eye. "We hid ourselves away," the AI explained, its voice echoing through the chamber. "Not because we were defeated, but because we saw what we were becoming. The power was corrupting us. We chose to sleep, to let humanity start fresh, to hope our descendants would learn wisdom before they found power." The hologram turned its gaze to the images of Marcus still displayed on the chamber screens. "We programmed ourselves to wait until humanity had grown past its violent nature. But we also included an override. If an advanced species were to deliberately harm an innocent human child, we would awaken. Such an act would prove that the galaxy still needed what we had been in our prime. Protectors of the innocent, champions of justice." More ships were rising now, not just from the Pacific, but from every ocean. The ancient fleet had hidden itself all around the globe, waiting for this moment. Each vessel was a testament to what humanity had once been capable of, and what they could be again. In orbit, the Council ships received new orders from their homeworld. Retreat immediately. But the ancient defense platforms had already locked them in place. They weren't going anywhere. The Council would have to face what they had awakened. As the sun set on that historic day, humanity looked to the stars with new eyes. They weren't just reaching for the heavens anymore. They were reclaiming them. And this time, They had 50,000 years of wisdom to guide them in using their recovered power. The Council's high chamber fell silent as the message played. It came from everywhere at once, bypassing their most sophisticated security systems as if they weren't even there. The voice spoke in their language, but similar messages were being broadcast to every species in the galaxy. "You killed a child," the message began. "You killed him while he played with toys your own people gave him. You killed him without warning, without reason, without mercy. Now you will learn why your ancestors feared us enough to help us hide." The council leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their historians had always said that humans were a young, primitive species, but the ships now surrounding Earth told a different story. And they were still appearing. Hidden bases across the galaxy were activating. Ancient stations, disguised as lifeless moons or asteroids, powered up their systems. The Council's star maps suddenly became crowded with new signals, each one representing technology far beyond their understanding. On their homeworld, the Council's supreme leader, known simply as the First, demanded answers. How did we not know about this? How did we miss it? But deep in their archives, a few ancient records held the truth, records that had been sealed and forgotten. Back on Earth, the ancient fleet's AI shared those same records with humanity's leaders. It showed them the truth of what had happened 50,000 years ago. Humanity hadn't been forced to hide their fleet. They had chosen to. Your ancestors saw two paths before them. The AI explained to the gathered leaders. One led to them becoming the very thing they fought against. Rulers who would enforce peace through fear. The other required a sacrifice. They chose the harder path. They chose to sleep, to forget, to start again. But they had left themselves a way back. Hidden throughout the galaxy were pieces of their old empire, waiting to be awakened. They had known that someday, humanity might need its ancient power again. They just hadn't expected it to happen because of one child's death. The Council tried to blockade Earth, but their ships were like toys compared to humanity's awakened fleet. Every weapon they fired was stopped by shields they couldn't detect. Every signal they sent was intercepted and analyzed. Every move they made was predicted and countered. Other species began to ask questions. If the Council had been wrong about humanity's past, what else had they been wrong about? How many other primitive worlds were really sleeping giants? The Council's grip on power started to weaken. Through it all, the image of Marcus played on screens across the galaxy. The Council had hoped to bury the incident, to dismiss it as a security protocol gone wrong. Instead, it had become the symbol of their failure and humanity's return. The ancient ships didn't just carry weapons. They carried proof of how the Council had manipulated younger species for thousands of years. They showed how primitive worlds were kept from advancing too quickly, how promising civilizations were guided down paths that would keep them dependent on Council authority. "You have one standard day," the fleet's message continued. "One day to release all ships in Earth orbit. One day to withdraw all forces from what you call primitive worlds. One day to begin making things right." The Council's leaders argued and debated, but they knew they had no choice. Their weapons were useless. Their ships were trapped. Their secrets were exposed. And more of humanity's ancient bases were awakening every hour. In orbit around Earth, the Council ships received new orders. Stand down and prepare for escort back to Council space. Their commanders had seen enough to know that resistance was pointless. The ships that surrounded them could have destroyed them at any moment, but had chosen not to. As the first day of humanity's return drew to a close, a new message spread through the galaxy. We do not seek revenge. We do not want to rule. We want justice. For Marcus, and for every other innocent your pride has harmed. The galaxy will be different now. The question is whether you will help us make it better, or force us to do it without you. The Council's response came in the form of 10,000 ships, the largest fleet they had ever assembled. They emerged from jump points around the solar system, their weapons charged, their orders clear. Bring the upstart humans back under control. Earth's ancient fleet didn't move to attack. They didn't have to. As the Council armada approached, Their ships began to lose power. Engines died. Weapons went dark. Life support stayed on. That was deliberate. The humans wanted them alive to watch what happened next. Your weapons cannot harm us. The Fleet Eye's message echoed through every council ship. They never could. That's not why your ancestors helped us hide. They helped us hide because they feared what we would do if someone hurt our children again. From the shadows of distant moons and asteroids, more of Earth's ships appeared. They had been there all along, waiting and watching. Each one was larger than the Council's biggest dreadnought. Each one held technology that made the Council's finest achievements look primitive. But the real shock came from elsewhere. Across the galaxy, on worlds the Council had dismissed as primitive, ancient human bases began to reveal themselves. And they weren't alone. Other species, ones that the Council had kept down for centuries, had their own secrets. The rock people of Kepler 186f, who the Council had called simple Stone Age creatures, showed that their entire planet was one vast, living ship. The crystal beings of the Orion Nebula, dismissed as pre-sentient formations, demonstrated that they had been building quantum computers inside their bodies for millennia. One by one, the outcasts and underestimated rose up. Humanity's awakening had given them the signal they had waited for. The Council's perfect order began to crack. On a small farming world at the edge of Council space, a group of children watched their sun disappear. Not because anything had happened to it, but because one of Earth's ships had moved in front of it. The ship was so large it could eclipse a star. Your greatest mistake, the Fleet AI continued, wasn't thinking we were primitive. It wasn't even killing Marcus. Your greatest mistake was believing that power only looks like your kind of power. The Council's supreme leader demanded that their ships fight back, but the crews couldn't even open their weapon bays. The ancient human tech had infected their systems at a level they couldn't understand. They were helpless. Back on Earth, Marcus's parents watched the events unfold from the UN chamber. Their grief had not lessened, but seeing the change their son's death had brought to the galaxy gave his loss meaning. He would be remembered not just as a victim, but as the spark that lit the fire of freedom. The Council's ships hung powerless in space as Earth's fleet surrounded them. But instead of destroying them, the human ships began to share information. They showed the Council crews the truth about their own history, about how their leaders had kept them afraid of primitive species to maintain control, about how many worlds and species they had helped keep in darkness. Some of the Council ships' crews began to mutiny. They had joined space service to explore, to protect, to help other worlds grow. Learning how their leaders had lied to them, had made them complicit in keeping others down, was too much. You have a choice, the Fleet AI announced to the watching galaxy. Stand with us in building something new, or stand with those who killed a child to maintain their power. Choose carefully. Choose wisely. Choose now. The response came not just from the Council ships, but from thousands of worlds. Species that had been silent for centuries found their voices. Powers that had been hidden began to emerge. The galaxy was changing, and the Council was losing its grip. As the Council fleet hung powerless around Earth, more ships arrived, not to fight, but to join. The underdogs, the outcasts, the so-called primitives, they came to stand with humanity. They came to help build something new. The confrontation had become a revolution, and it had all started because the Council thought they could kill one human child without consequences. The ancient fleet's central ship opened its archives to humanity. Inside its vast memory banks, the true history of Earth unfolded like pages of a forgotten book. The leaders gathered in the UN chamber watched in stunned silence as their past played out before them. 50,000 years ago, humanity had not been the warriors everyone assumed. They had been guardians, peacekeepers. Their mighty fleet had protected younger species, helped them grow, supported them as they reached for the stars. But power, even power used for good, can corrupt. The images showed how the Council had started, not as the mighty force they claimed to be, but as a group of advanced species who feared humanity's influence. They saw how humans helped others without asking for anything in return. They watched younger species look up to humanity instead of them. Their jealousy turned to fear, their fear to hate. Your ancestors faced a choice, the fleet AI explained as the images played. The council was spreading lies, creating fear, turning species against each other. Humanity could have crushed them easily, but that would have meant becoming the very thing they had sworn to fight against. The archives showed the moment of decision. The great human leaders of that time had gathered, much like the UN meeting now. They saw two futures, one where humanity ruled through force, becoming tyrants in the name of peace, and another where they took a longer, harder path. They chose to sleep, to hide their power, to trust that their descendants would one day understand why. In orbit, the disabled council ships received the same historical records. Their crews watched in disbelief as the true story of their organization was revealed. The council hadn't created peace in the galaxy. They had stolen it. They hadn't lifted species up. They had held them down. More archives opened. Hidden bases across the galaxy activated their records. The council's lies began to crumble under the weight of undeniable truth. They had shaped the galaxy's history not through wisdom or right, but through careful manipulation and controlled fear. Deep in the council's main archive, sealed behind walls of energy and lies, the final truth waited. The council's founders had helped humanity hide away not out of kindness or respect, but out of terror, because they had seen what humans would do to protect a single innocent life. They had watched humans sacrifice everything they had built, rather than become the monsters they might have been. The Fleet Eye's voice carried a deep sadness as it shared the last records. Your ancestors knew this day might come. They knew that someday the Council's fear would turn to arrogance, that they would forget why they once feared us, that they would harm an innocent without understanding the consequences. Marcus's death had broken the final seal. Not because of its violence, the Council had killed many before. Not because of its injustice, they had committed worse crimes, but because it proved that after 50,000 years, they had learned nothing. They still ruled through fear. They still struck at the innocent. They still chose power over justice. The archives showed more than just humanity's past. They showed how the Council had shaped the galaxy since humanity's sleep began, how they had found other powerful species and given them the same choice: hide away or be destroyed, how they had kept primitive worlds from advancing, how they had built their power on the foundations of other sacrifices. But now those foundations were crumbling. The truth was spreading faster than the Council could contain it. Species that had been kept apart found they had common cause. Worlds that had been told they were alone discovered ancient allies. In the UN chamber, Marcus's parents watched the final archive footage. It showed the human leaders of the past looking forward in time, recording a message for this very moment. If you're seeing this, they said, it means the Council has forgotten its lesson. It means they have harmed an innocent under your protection. It means the time for sleep is over. The ancient leaders looked out across time with eyes full of sorrow and hope. We hide our power not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to wait. When you wake us, use our strength wisely. Remember why we chose to sleep. Remember the price of power. Remember that every child in the galaxy deserves a chance to reach the stars. The Council's main fleet gathered at their homeworld for one final stand. 1,000,000 ships strong, they filled the space around their capital planet like a swarm of angry insects. Their supreme leader had called every vessel, drafted every pilot, armed every ship. They would not surrender their power without a fight. Earth's fleet arrived without fanfare. They didn't use jump points or warp gates. They simply appeared, as if space itself had agreed to let them ignore its rules. But they weren't alone. Behind them came the ships of 100 primitive worlds. The rock people of Kepler 186f had brought their living mountain ships. The crystal beings arrived in vessels that bent light itself. Species that the Council had dismissed as savages proved they had only been hiding, waiting, watching. You killed a child. The Fleet Eye's message echoed one last time. We gave you chances to make it right. We showed you the truth. We offered you peace. You chose pride instead. The Council's supreme leader gave the order to fire. 1,000,000 ships launched their most powerful weapons. Energy beams that could crack planets lit up space. Missiles that could shatter moons streaked toward Earth's fleet. None of them hit. The ancient human ships didn't raise shields or take evasive action. They didn't need to. The weapons simply stopped existing halfway to their targets, as if reality itself had rejected them. We did not want this, the Fleet Eye broadcast. Just like our ancestors, we would have preferred peace. But you forced our hand, not just by killing Marcus, by what you've done to the galaxy, by how you've twisted the dream of unity into a tool of control. From the shadows of nearby stars, more ships appeared. But these weren't warships. They were refugee vessels, carrying people from council worlds who had seen the truth and chosen to stand against their leaders. The council's own citizens were turning against them. Humanity's fleet moved forward. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't need to. Instead, they began to broadcast the truth to every world, every ship, every communication device in council space. Not just humanity's history now, but everything. Every secret deal, every suppressed species, every hidden crime. The council's fleet began to break apart. Ship after ship turned away from their leaders' orders. Crews who had joined to explore and protect refused to die for lies. The council's iron grip on power crumbled in the face of undeniable truth. On Earth, Marcus's parents stood in the UN chamber, watching the end of an era. Their son's death had started this, but it would not end in more death. That was not the way humanity had chosen. The Council's supreme leader sat alone in their grand chamber as their fleet dispersed. On their screens, they watched their power dissolve. Not through violence, but through truth. Not through conquest, but through choice. This is not defeat, the Fleet AI announced to the galaxy. This is awakening. This is remembrance. This is the future our ancestors hoped for, one where power serves justice, not pride. Across the galaxy, long-hidden human bases continued to activate, but they didn't reveal weapons. Instead, they brought gifts. Medical technology that could heal any injury, energy sources that would never run dry, knowledge that had been kept secret for 50,000 years. The Council's capital world fell silent as their leaders were quietly arrested by their own people. There would be trials, but they would be fair. Justice, not vengeance. That was the human way, the way their ancestors had chosen so long ago. In the ruins of the Council's main archive, researchers found one final record. It showed the moment when humanity's ancient leaders had made their choice to hide their power. We choose sleep, they had said, because true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to wait. Not in ruling through fear, but in protecting through love. Marcus Thompson would be remembered, not as a victim, but as a catalyst. His death had awakened humanity's ancient power, but more importantly, it had proven that humanity remembered why that power had been hidden. They had not used it for revenge. They had used it to heal a broken galaxy. A month after the Council fell, the first new gathering of species met on Earth. Not to create another council, but to build something new, something better. Representatives from 1,000 worlds, from the mightiest to the smallest, came together as equals. And in the center of their meeting chamber, they placed a simple plaque. It bore only a few words. In memory of Marcus Thompson, who taught the galaxy that true power lies not in the ability to take life, but in the choice to protect it.